is this has just been announced. This has just been announced. European leaders plan to meet Trump before the Putin talks on August 15th in the U.S. Alaska, actually. Well, it is the U.S. So this is important news because things are eating up as far as this high-stake diplomacy between U.S., Europe, China, Russia, and the U.S. Now, I will tell you what's happening, right? I'll hear what you have to say. Then I will tell you what's really happening. As usual, what you want to know is what's really going on, right? Because the news comes out all the time. But what you want to know, and specifically you want to understand what's going on and what are going to be the implication of this. And I'm going to tell you what's going on. Okay? So essentially, what we have is that EU leaders, they want to hold a call with Trump ahead of the Putin meeting over Ukraine. They want to talk about it. European leaders will hold consultation. They want to talk to Trump first to make sure, and this is the news, we'll talk about what that means, but basically what they want to know, the Europe says, wait, don't talk to Putin, don't agree on anything, but that's not the point. That is not what's really happening. Okay, Germany has convened a virtual meeting on Wednesday to discuss ways to exert more pressure on Moscow ahead of the pivotal U.S.-led talks in Alaska. But that's not what's going on. Yes, they are going to meet. Yes, Putin is going to be there. Yes, Trump is going to be there. But I doubt very much that they're going to be talking about Ukraine. And this is why I want you to understand, right? This is where you need a channel like this to basically not so much report the news, but basically saying, what the heck is going on? And what do you care, most importantly? Well, you care a lot. You care a lot because you need to understand the strategy of the U.S., which impacts you directly. And that strategy, believe it or not, is to try to keep China, Russia, India away apart from each other. What does Putin want? He wants to keep the U.S. away from Europe. There's going to be a discussion about Ukraine, but Trump cannot tell Putin that, okay, fine, you're going to take this and we'll do that. No, none of this is going to happen because it cannot happen anyway. You don't even have Zelensky yet, right? So nothing can happen. But that's where you need to understand how these games are played. These are three-dimensional chess, where these people are playing three-dimensional chess. Hey, super. What do you think they're going to be talking about? Everyone says, well, they're going to sit down and Trump is going to give away whatever Putin got. We have farmers here who can explain land swaps. But I don't think that's what it's about. I think it's about Trump trying to keep Putin away from China. Remember one thing, the more Putin fights and fights and fights, we are Indians are ready for struggle. But that's good, but that's not what it's about. Taking a stand against the U.S. Yes, super. That's exactly what's happening. And glad that someone you understand. You need to realize what's going on. What's going on is China and India and Russia, I guess, are taking a quote-unquote stand, quote-unquote, against the U.S., but what they're really doing is they are getting closer and together. It's not once against the other. I think it's once. They're going to do their thing, and they're going to let the U.S. do its thing. And that's the problem, and that's why the U.S. doesn't want that. They don't want to be left alone. They do not want to be irrelevant. Because quite frankly, and we'll go over this later on, I will show you where the clock is ticking for the U.S., But back to this meeting, what I believe is going to happen is, if you understand what the motivation is, right? What is the motivation of the U.S., for example? What do they want? What at the end of the day, what is the U.S. goal behind this deal? Well, basically, the Trump administration appears intent on achieving a ceasefire. They want a ceasefire. Or because they don't want the Ukrainian to be hit by the Russian. Well, yes, of course. But deep down, in the background, Trump wants to make sure that Putin doesn't end up with China. I don't know if you remember, but in 2022, when Russia invaded Ukraine and Biden weaponized the dollar right away, soon after, Russia made a pact with China for weapons, for oil, for a bunch of things, right? You're pushing them. And here, if you understand Trump's motivation, it's true motivation, right? It's true motivation, not what you hear in the news. It's true motivation, which is basically, I want to make sure, I want to keep my friends close, but I want to keep my enemy closer. And how do you do that? Well, you want to make sure that you don't weaken Putin to a point, which that's what the Europeans are doing, quite frankly, to the point where he says, I have no choice, but I have to go, I'm going to side with China because they're going to help me. And so what's going to happen? Well, basically, you're going to have a meeting between Trump and Putin, and they're going to say, okay, how can we agree on it? How can we work together here? Okay? So that you don't end up with the Chinese. No, they may not actually say those words, but at the end of the day, don't forget, the MAGA people MAGA is pressuring Trump to end the involvement with Ukraine. MAGA is maybe not pressuring, but MAGA is frustrating over the Ukraine support. Many within the MAGA movement have voiced clear disapproval when Trump resumed arms shipments to Ukraine. His reversal drew criticism from outspoken allies who see continued aid as a betrayal of America first. Let me do a quick poll right now to see if we're on the same page and see what you guys think, right? Now, basically, the first poll I'm going to do right now is, should Putin and Trump actually meet? Do you think that they should meet? That's the first question. Okay? So while you're answering that, let me show you exactly what I am talking about. Okay? So basically, MAGA, headlines echoes, MAGA world irked at Trump U-turn on Ukraine. MAGA loses it after Trump's sudden flip on Ukraine aid. They don't like this idea. They don't like the ideas of having the U.S., getting involved, okay, the U.S. is not giving arms, but they're selling arms. So you're still involved to some fashion. They do not like this at all. They don't want continued MAGA-aligned rhetoric. Trump suspended military and intelligence assistance after, remember the meeting with Zelensky? Do you remember the meeting with Zelensky? And who was the one that was pushing the hardest? Right? Remember J.D. Vance? He went in there and he says, what are you doing? You didn't get dressed. You don't have a suit or whatever. You're disrespectful. Why? Because he wants to be president one day. And he's not going to be president without MAGA. So he needs to get, these people behind him. A senior advisor from the MAGA wing, Pete Hegseth, openly called for limiting ambition like restoring Ukraine pre-2014 borders and shifting burden sharing to Europe. He also wants to be close to MAGA. And he also is going to say, you know what? I don't want to get involved. I mean, you lost. You take your territory, give it to the Russian. We don't want to get involved because I want to be elected. And who knows, maybe I could be vice president, even president one day, right? So prominent MAGA figures have clearly pressured Trump to dial back. So what do you think Trump himself is going to do when he's going to meet with Putin? He has to stop this thing one way or the other, not so much for Ukraine, but for himself and for the MAGA movement that he helped create. So what does that mean? Well, frankly, no, you're not going to like this, but, and we'll see if I'm correct or not, but basically, if he, basically, he's going to have to, obviously, the lamb swap is going to come out. I'm going to say, okay, you know what? You got to, whatever they have, they keep, and or something to that extent. They're going to say no. They say, well, listen, if you keep fighting, that's not going to work, because for the U.S., the more Russia fights, the weaker they get. Of course, you're going to say, well, that's great. No, that's not great. That's not great for the U.S. Because what is Russia going to do? They're going to get closer to Russia. Don't forget, India is getting closer to China. India is going to go for a major trip in China very soon. And they didn't want to go to a trip that Trump had organized with Russia, with Australia, with Japan, all the Asian people. Okay, so he's losing that too. So he needs to keep this Russia thing going. That's why you need to understand it is not about the news. This is about what's really happening. And the news tends to kind of tell you what you want to hear one way or the other. And that's not good, because you're not being told what's going to happen. And frankly, they can't really say what's going to happen, because you may not like what you hear. And if you don't like what you hear, then you're not going to buy the paper or look at them, give them views, right? That's a thing. That's a ticket. That's what's happening here. So what do? I'm going to sit down and we're going to say, well, option number one, give them what they want. Obviously, what Ukraine wants, I mean, that's going to be tough. They want full territorial restoration, including Crimea. They want legally binding security guarantees, right, for NATO's, maybe even joining NATO, which is out of the question. But they want justice and accountability, international tribunal, war crime and aggression, reparation from Russia. Then they want sustained economic and military support. Keep giving me weapons. I need more weapons. And no negotiation without Ukraine at the table. I mean, the likelihood that they get this is like 5 to 10%. That's never going to happen, okay? But Trump is not there for that. Trump is not there to help Zelensky. Trump is not there to help Europe. Trump is there to help the U.S. That's what he does. And most importantly, he's there, with his delegation, who some of them are MAGA people, to help the MAGA movement, to keep it going. That is going to be his legacy. So basically, only two choices. Ukraine, you give up the territory. No, well, you know what? No more weapons. I'm not selling any more weapons, because even though the U.S. is not giving the weapons, the MAGA people knows very well that you know what you're doing here, right? You're essentially giving the weapons. And we are still involved in another war that's going on and on and on and on and on. All right, let's take a look at the survey results. And since we have plenty of people, what are we saying? Okay, Putin should meet. 68% of you are saying yes, we should meet. We should meet with Putin. And frankly, you have to. You have no choice. You got to keep talking to the guys, because if you don't talk to him, guess who's going to be talking to him? China. And this whole thing, believe it or not, is all about China. I mean, China wants to make China great again. Nothing wrong with that. But the U.S. wants to do the same thing. But actually, what the U.S. wants to do is wants to stay relevant. Doesn't want to lose its relevancy. And that is extremely important. That is very important. And that is what's happening, or what's going to happen very soon in... Hey, Terry. Hey, Rebecca. Hey, Blue. How you guys doing? Shelley says, bravo, Putin. There is no master plan except more marble statues. Food has just joined us. Hello. Bello, Richard. So basically, we are having it's a bit of a conundrum. So essentially, what ends up happening is the U.S. needs to protect its interests by keeping. You don't want to keep that enemy too weak. And what does what does Russia want, right? I mean, at the end of the day, what does Russia want? Well, the ideal outcome of a deal with the U.S. and Europe, but no one is paying attention to Europe, unfortunately. Basically, Russia wants three things. One, they want territorial legitimacy, recognition of Russia control over territories it currently occupies, like Crimea, part of Donetsk, all these areas that they've took. This could be a formal recognition or a freeze, which leaves Russia in possession without ongoing Western challenges. Fine, don't. In fact, actually, right now, I believe that they're in the process of buying houses and changing titles, like they're living there already. Moscow frames this as a new realities on the ground. Okay. Yes, the Black Sea is very important, according to EQRC. Of course, Russia wants security guarantee, a legally binding commitment that Ukraine will not join NATO, which I don't think that's a very hard thing to get right now. Sanction reliefs, right? You're weaponizing the dollar against me. I want to be able to do business again. Permission to re-enter global markets, restoration of access to Western technology, components, and global payment systems. Basically, the stuff that you got taken away because of what happened to with the weaponizing of the dollar. Political prestige, a deal that lets Moscow claim a victory at home. There is no way that Putin is just going to leave and say, okay, you know what? As long as you don't join NATO, I'm out of here. If you believe that, that is never going to happen. But I don't think it's that kind of a deal. It's that kind of an understanding, right? Because beyond Ukraine, Russia also wants to use any deal to drive a wedge between U.S. and Europe and between U.S. and its other allies. Well, they're all kind of doing the same thing. They want to make sure that they stay relevant, all of them. They all want to become relevant. When I say all of them, I'm talking about U.S., Russia, and China. So they're all kind of playing the same game. And India to a certain extent. But India is still very reliant on the U.S., while China is not anymore, not that much, not crucially, and neither is Russia. Frankly, we don't do business with Russia anymore. The U.S. is not doing business with anymore, and that's a problem. So now you have three parties that don't really need each other, but yet they don't want to make sure that you don't get along with the other guy. Now, how long can that last, right? How long can you have this kind of, there's these tug of wars that go on and on and on, and nobody can agree, and yet the pressure mounts? That is a question, and that is dangerous because that could lead to a war ultimately. Although not a war the way you're thinking, the tanks are going to run over, nobody's going to invade the U.S. That's crazy. First, it's too far away. It's too dangerous. It's too costly. Look what Russia is doing Ukraine, and they're next door to each other. Who's going to... But, and more important and more dangerous, to you specifically, to you, my subscribers. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and send me some chats, super chats, so I could have coffee this afternoon. If you want to ask me a specific question, I will answer you as well. They also want to make sure they become and stay relevant, because if they don't stay relevant, that's going to be a problem. That is a big problem. Why is this a big problem? Because that's what they're doing. They keep attacking, and unfortunately, the concern is that it's not going to last. This is something that's going on and on and on, and unfortunately, the issue is what do they really want? What do they really want? That is the problem, and that is what we're trying to achieve here. So we shall see. We shall see what they do. We shall see how does this end up. I don't know exactly what's happening, but I could tell you that this may not end up in a very good way for everyone, because all these people ultimately are going to be doing things that, frankly, they don't want, frankly, that they're afraid of doing, and that's going to be an issue. That could be a problem. And look what's happening right now. What does What does let's say what the European Union wants. What do they want? Okay, the European Union basically is Europe basically wants to preserve Ukraine's sovereignty and borders. The Europe wants to keep Ukraine in a driver's seat. Europe maintain pressure on Russia. It wants to do a long-term security guarantees. I mean, imagine they want to preserve Ukraine's sovereignty and borders. So what does that mean? You want Russia to pull back. That's never going to happen. Okay, Putin, if you know anything about Putin, Putin is all about being who he is. Putin is really someone that wants to make Russia great again. Okay, so that's very important for him. Okay, the idea right now is that one thing you don't want to see happening. This is a nuclear war. Nothing is happening more than weapon sales. Well, yeah, but new places is right. New places news is correct. But nothing is happening more than weapon sales. What you have to understand is even the weapon sales the MAGA people do not like. They do not want to have the U.S. into a war that's going to go on and on and on and on. They don't want that. Is this going to be a nuclear war? No, there's not going to be a nuclear war because nobody wins. So they all know that. But what you can have, and that's something that's going to impact you, is that if tomorrow they decide, China decides to deal with India and decides to deal with Russia, and the pieces are there already. The pieces are already there because, as somebody mentioned before, you don't see them reacting that much to the U.S., right? India says no more. We are sick of Ukraine. What an ungrateful are tired of trying to make peace for Ukraine with Putin. The two of us only have. He is Sunny. I think he is Sunny as basically kind of given the MAGA position here. Of course, Europe is basically saying, no, that's not fair. You shouldn't be doing that. Look at them. They're suffering. They've been bombed. They've been attacked, unprovoked, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that's true too. So what is your solution? The solution from the Europe side is as follows. We want to, the Europe says that, right? Preserve Ukraine's sovereignty and borders, right? The overriding aim is to avoid legitimizing any territorial change. So what? Russia gives up Crimea? Really? Do you really think that's going to happen? Right? You're right. Europe sees accepting Russian control over occupied areas as setting a dangerous precedent. So you think that then Russia is trying to invade Ukraine and is going to take over Europe. It wants to keep Ukraine in a driver's seat. They want the principle of nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine respected. Well, yeah, the only thing is Ukraine needs the U.S., needs a weapon, and even Russia, even Europe needs those weapons. Okay, must be at the table of any agreement. Well, but you know that cannot happen. You're asking for things that don't happen. So if you're asking for something that doesn't happen, what is your ultimate goal here? What is Europe getting at? Long-term security guarantee. I mean, Europe is less focused on a quick ceasefire, more on a just settlement. But that could go on for years. And that is not good for the U.S. That is not good for the U.S. MAGA people are not going to like that. And by next year, don't forget, the U.S. has congressional, voting again, right, for Congress. You can't have this hanging over Congress because are you for, are you against? Remember one thing. These countries do not have friends or enemies. That's for public consumption. And I want my subscribers to understand that. And please join this channel so you understand what's really going on via this analysis. They have interests. No one has friends. We all have interests. Nations have no permanent friends or allies. They only have permanent interest. It is in the interest, according to the U.S., according to my analysis, it's the interest of the U.S. to basically make sure that You keep your friends close and your enemy closer. And this quote is actually attributed to Lord Palmerston. Let's learn something today, who was Britain's foreign secretary and later prime minister in the mid-19th century. That was picked up later on by by Winston Churchill. We have no eternal allies, and we have no perpetual enemies. Our interests are eternal and perpetual, and those interests is our duty to follow. So it's basically interest. So you can make it emotional, right? And Trump is not not a very emotional person, believe it or not. He's going to go in there and he's going to talk to Putin and he's going to explain to him, listen, how do we deal with this? Because you know what I want. Because don't forget, if I know this, right? They got 20 or who knows how many strategists, right, with history, background, telling him, okay, well, this is what's going to happen if you do this. And if you do this, Putin's going to do that. And if Putin do that, that's what's going to happen. The longer Putin fights, the weaker he gets and the closer he gets to China. Is that what you want? No. Well, then you have to stop the war. But they don't want to stop the war. Well, then you just don't sell the weapons. That will keep the MAGA people happy. It will be very upsetting to the European and the world community that the U.S. is abandoning but, you will offer a deal to Ukraine, which they will not accept. I mean, what they're looking for is going to be very difficult. It's a very unfortunate situation that has happened. And again, we're not going to go back why the invasion happened, and this is important. This is important for the U.S. Why? Wow. It's important, obviously, for whoever wants to come after Trump. Because whoever wants to come after Trump, they want to make sure they are very, very nice with MAGA. And MAGA does not want this war. In fact, MAGA doesn't want any war whatsoever, doesn't want the U.S. to be involved in any war because it is a bad thing and it doesn't work. Let me ask you another one. This one is going to be a doozy. Should the U.S. provide 100% no friends or enemy, only interests? That's right. And frankly, you should, in your daily life, you should look at it that way as well. You should look at it as if you only have interests. Because once you make it personal, upsetting, then you don't understand what they're doing. And obviously you have to be careful because this war goes on and on and on and on. What's going to happen is obviously the Republicans are not going to fare well, right? And that's going to upset the court. And Trump will lose power that he controls currently, right? And, I mean, that's maybe something that you want. This is important because their perception of themselves, according to your Sonny, is completely unrealistic. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, but well, let's see. I mean, this is a big topic because what's going to happen, they want to talk to Trump before he goes there. Now, why is Trump talking to Europe? Should the U.S. provide weapons to Ukraine? Starting poll right now. Why is Trump meeting with Europe? Well, so the European leaders will take part in a video conference with Trump, Vice President J.D. Vance, and Zelensky. So Zelensky is going to be part of that discussion. So you could imagine what's going to happen, right? EU European Affairs Ministers will also meet online on Wednesday to emphasize unity and support for Ukraine. But you can't keep asking for something that's going to prolong and prolong and prolong the issue. Right? The flurry of calls underlies intensifying effort by European capitals to try to shape the outcome because politically they also want to stay relevant. I mean, the US, all of them have the same goal at the end of the day. The same way that should be your goal. You want to remain relevant. While you're still here, you want to have something to say. You want to count. You want to have an impact. You want to do something. You want to protect your people. We are expecting U.S. sanction on Russia, and instead we are now preparing for this meeting with an indicted war criminal, a top European diplomat said. With that kind of attitude, you're not going to get anything done. No, it's not our way. They could never help us. There is no good outcome. No, there is no good outcome. Because they all want, obviously, what they want, and then there's what they need, right? What the U.S. want and what the U.S. need. The U.S. want to stop the war with Ukraine. But the U.S. need for Russia to stay away from China. Right? What does Ukraine want? Right? Ukraine want what they need, which is basically we want everything back the way it was, and we want to punish Putin for what he did. And Putin, what he wants, right? He wants to keep what he has, and what he needs, he wants to make sure that Trump, and most importantly the U.S., splits from Europe. So he wants to have this meeting go bad. Now, don't look at it as if Putin is a bad person and Trump is a good person and Europe is a stupid people and Zelensky doesn't know what's going on. No, don't look at it that way. Don't look at it that way. They all have interests and they have diverging interests. Obviously, you don't hear anything about China, right? China is staying in the background and they're waiting. That is never going to happen. Never. Hence, the only problem is European became irrelevant Hans Dieter. I'm assuming you're in Europe. Unfortunately, there is no Europe. I mean, Europe is basically a group of 27 merchants. There's no European army, right? You can't win a cage match. That's funny, Stephen. They don't have an army. Now, of course, what you need to worry about, and that's why I want my subscribers to be aware of it, is that all these people are going to be deciding things that are going to impact you one way or the other. What do I mean by that? Well, if you're in Europe right now and this thing doesn't get resolved, remember, China right now is literally dumping, and frankly, to their accord, because they're producing a tremendous amount of things in Europe. And prices are dropping because the Europeans are losing businesses. I mean, Europe is getting squeezed literally between China and the U.S. And now since the U.S. is saying you're on your own, making peace with Russia is good for America and bad for Ukraine. And I take personal offense that Ukraine and the UA are involved in politics. Interesting. Well, they are involved in. Yeah, I mean that is a situation right now. So what do we have here? Right now, should U.S. provide weapons to Ukraine? It's kind of even Steven. I would rather make money with Russia, live in peace, and create shared space venture together compared to global. Of course. I mean, hey, let's not forget one thing. Russia. World War II. Do you remember? If it wasn't for the Russian, who knows? Maybe we will all be speaking German today. It's a joke, but that's kind of maybe not in the U.S. But in Europe, okay, Russia actually was very helpful in, destroying the war regime of Germany. I mean, not Germany. Let's call it Hitler. Okay. So at some point, they got together. At some point, they were friends. I mean, again, they were not friends. They had interests that aligned, because don't forget that Hitler also wanted to go, just like Napoleon, he wanted to attack. He wanted to go to Russia and destroy Russia. Okay, that didn't happen because, again, incredibly enough, the Russian winter. So the situation is this. We've got a meeting coming up with a bunch of people diverging, and whatever these people are going to decide or not going to decide, it's going to impact you in a big kind of way. Example, in the U.S., there's a meeting in Russia, and they can't agree, right? They can't agree. Now, of course, don't expect them over there to decide the fate of Ukraine. That's not, I don't believe that's what Trump is there for, because he knows already that whatever he comes up with, which is the only thing that he could potentially say, is basically, give up the territory, fine, no NATO, leave Putin alone, and let's start trading with him. That's not going to be good with Ukraine. No, frankly, he doesn't have to listen to them. Probably not going to be good for the Europeans either. Right? But at least he stops the war by not providing any more weapons. Now, if Europe wants to give more weapons, then they could go right ahead and do it. But still, Trump has a problem, because that's going to continue to weaken Russia. And how far does he want to go to stop the war, to preserve Russia, right? To get not to preserve Russia, to prevent Russia to get closer to China, because U.S. doesn't like Russia, right? They have interests again. I do not feel that Trump and Putin would meet unless they had an agreement. No, but exactly, Sonny. They have an agreement already. They have an agreement. They know exactly. I mean, these people are not stupid. They know exactly what they're going to get away. They know exactly. Zelensky is going all over the place saying, I don't agree to this. You cannot split my country. So they know it's not going to happen. What they are agreeing is the next step. They're not going to say, what do you want Ukraine to do? Putin is going to ask Trump, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Are you going to keep giving them weapons? Is that what you're going to do? These are big games, and for you to understand what's happening is you need to go behind the scenes. Now, at the same time, the Russia investment envoy Kirill Dmitrily, cautioned that unnamed countries might mount titanic efforts, including provocation and disinformation, to derail the summit, which is expected to focus on exploring a long-term peace resolution of Ukraine. In other words, what this is telling you is you're not going to prevent the two to meet and agree on what the relationship is going to be going forward. Because that's what they're trying to stop. They don't want it to happen, right? Because imagine, this is the first time that, first of all, Putin is coming to the U.S. in a long time. Putin is meeting with the U.S. president. I mean, his stature is being elevated now, right? He's important enough to be talked to, met, and discussed with. And Trump is giving him a gift now. And he's probably going to tell him, still, I'm gifting you something. What are you going to give me? I can't pull out. There's no way I'm going to do that. So what are you going to do for me? Because I'm doing a lot for you right now. Polish Prime Minister shared a mix of fear and hope ahead of the summit, emphasizing that Kiev must not be sidelined. He noted that the U.S. has assured European partners it will consult them ahead of the meeting, which he will. While Europe supports peace initiative, it insists any settlements must include Ukraine and uphold the principle that borders cannot be altered by force. What does that mean? You want him to go back? Wow. Wow. Lots of vote here. Should U.S. provide weapon? 57%, not as strong, but 57% says yes, you should provide weapons. As an American, I'm tired of telling the country what they can and cannot do. It takes forward office. Correct. So basically what we're saying is 58% of you are basically saying, okay, let's give them weapons. Cynthia, Trump is well, that's what they're telling you. But puppet means he's not thinking. I'm not so sure. Should Putin and Trump meet? Yeah. So basically they should meet. And there's definitely more a point of meeting. They should meet. Yes, they have to. And Trump wants to meet the guy. He wants to talk to him, to explain to him, okay, this is what I'm trying to do here. That's what I want to do. Henry says Trump is at least trying to stop the mess. Yes. Because this could be a very, forget the mess about Ukraine. This thing goes on and on. You're pushing Trump closer and closer. You're pushing Russia closer and closer to China. Now, keep in mind, okay, what's going on in the U.S. Why is this a big deal? Why is the U.S. Why is the clock ticking? I will tell you right now that in the U.S. share of global manufacturing output has declined from 30% to 16% in 25 years. Okay. Most pharmaceutical drugs are being made in India or in China. Now, as long as that line is open, it's not a big deal. What if it gets closed tomorrow? There was this huge intercation between the CEO of Intel, who was Mr. Chip, who helped China develop its, I mean, it's not the greatest, but it's close chip manufacturing industry. And he's coming to the, and I mean, he's a U.S. citizen, but he's helping, he's going to help Intel grow. But Trump says, no, 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 no. He basically says you're a puppet of China, essentially, and you should be fired. In fact, he's meeting with Trump today to explain to him the situation. That's what he's trying to do. No, that's not what I want to do. Again, Trump is not about that. Right? He probably wants some money from him or some further investment from Intel to develop more in the U.S. Because what has been happening with, unfortunately, with the semiconductors is from the 80s until the 90s. Originally the U.S. in the 90s used to produce 37% of semiconductors. Now it's 12%. It's losing that race, and there's concern that it might be losing the race on AI. So you need to understand the big picture. You need to understand the entire picture. Please, yes, Sonny, please understand that they're manipulating the truth. It was who provoked the situation to happen. I mean, the truth, unfortunately, is very, very difficult to get to right now, right? Because if you listen to the European newspapers, what is Trump doing? This is not fair. He's going in there. He's going to make a deal. He's giving credence to Putin. He shouldn't help him. He should work with us instead. We should go after Putin, blah, blah, blah. Knowing very well of themselves that what Trump is trying to do, because if I know this, they know that as well. And now you know it. So this is a very complex situation that's happening here. It is not a difficult concept. There is no more side to having a resolution with Russia than sending Ukraine more weapons, and it will not change the outcome. And obviously, from a strategic perspective, Trump does not want to upset the MAGA people too much. Now, don't forget, they're already pissed about the Epstein story. Remember, there are 12 Republicans, not to get off on a tangent here, but there are 12 Republicans that actually have written a resolution. They want to know what happened. They want the Epstein list. What do you think they do that for? Right? Not that they're into the sordid aspect of the Epstein situation. They also know what the MAGA movement is about. They also understand that the MAGA people want to know what happened. They do not like all these rich people hiding the truth. So they're also catering to MAGA. If you don't have MAGA behind you, you are not going to win an election. And all 12 Republicans say, listen, we need to know what's going on. So bring this woman out, bring this woman to Congress. That's a strategic initiative. That's a strategic aspect that you need to understand that is happening right now. Is it going to keep happening? Yes. If you do not have the MAGA, and that's where you need to see where the blood is flowing from. The blood is flowing from MAGA, right? And that's why, guess who is going to be at the meeting? And we haven't seen him in a while, frankly. J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance is going to be at the meeting. Why? The meeting with the European. He says, well, I need a seat at the table because eventually, I want to. And he's also going to make a play for it, right? That's what's happening in the background. And it's important to know because, the long-term resolution of this, if the U.S. is not successful and they lose Russia to China and they lose India to China, and they also become irrelevant from an industrial base, and all they have is a bunch of banks and a bunch of financial services, and you don't have education, you don't have rare earth minerals, you don't have none of these things, your future is going to be very problematic. They won't need the U.S. They will not need, imagine, no, that could never be. Hold that thought. Look what's happening. Look at yourself. Click, Ask any AI bot, what is the situation of the U.S. industrial situation, and they will tell you exactly what's happening. And then, if you live in the U.S. and you don't have any medicine, weapons, or anything, I'm not talking about now, but eventually, well, let me tell you what eventually means. Semiconductors, the years to critical loss is estimated at 5 to 7 years, not 25 years, 5 to 7 years. EV components like battery supply, 3 to 5 years. Generic, your medication, 3 to 5 years, because it's coming from India, China, Taiwan, China, India, China. The company is still very strong in steel and very strong in biotech, so that's going to take 10 years plus. But everything else is going to be gone very soon. 5 to 7 years. 5 to 7 years. Why do you think there's such a tremendous amount of pressure to meet, to move, to shake, right? What do you think the administration is so focused, hell-bent on getting things done quickly? Because the very creation of Trump, which is MAGA, might turn against him, or whoever else is not following him. So, and it's important to understand that all the issues that we're following on this channel, all the following issue, we're following the economy, the stock market, the dollar, the tariffs, Powell, Israel, China decoupling, inflation, Russia, all of this centered around one thing alone. MAGA, and more importantly right now, Trump. J.D. Vance is the next president. Trump has no election left. No, of course he has no election left. But he needs to show someone, because his lies can only go so far. Right. So J.D. Vance is the next president. So if you're J.D. Vance right now, you want to make sure that you understand where the power comes from, right? J.D. Vance has an interest. He has no friend, no enemy. J.D. Vance has an interest. And his interest is to essentially be able to become president one day, because that's what he wants, right? I mean, he's very close. Why wouldn't you want to do it? No accomplishments, only epic failures and debt. Well, yeah, but the debt has been there for quite some time, Evil Monkey. I have to tell you, it's been there for quite some time. And it's been growing a lot. Now, failure, we shall see, right? Because, I mean, I can understand Evolved Monkey's point, because what's happening is everybody's saying, yeah, but, okay, fine, we need to do something. But what, is that the way to go about it? Do you think that India is going to come to you by telling them that basically you're accusing India to actually taking the oil from Russia and reselling it? That's insulting a little bit. You're upsetting India, which is a good friend technically and very reliant. You're pressuring India to a way, and then you're taxing them 50%. And of course, yes, the last Trump admin record debt, or no, even worse. Yes, Evo Monkey is correct on that. The debt is now $37 trillion, and because of the big beautiful bill, they added another 3 to 4 trillion. So, yes. Now, is this a bad thing? Well, it depends if you have growth that goes with it, and we'll find out soon enough. Is the way to deal with this country the way to do it? Well, we'll find out soon enough. But the fact is, you're running out of time. So you don't have 3 years, let's put it this way, to negotiate a North American trade agreement like in the past. If you're going to do deals, you got to do them quickly. Now, are they done well? Even some of the Republicans says this is not the way to do it, because ultimately the tariffs are going to end up in your kitchen table. It is biblical level bad. Well, Evo Monkey, the Fed chair said that the national debt is manageable, but it is not sustainable. You cannot have that amount of debt. I mean, right now, that's probably not what the U.S. administration is worried about. Right now, what they're worried about is how are we going to manage this thing and come out ahead and still keeping a handle on Russia. And don't forget, Russia wants to make Russia great again. Remember that Putin, and you need to understand his thinking, Putin never uh, could understand why the USSR disappeared and got disintegrated the way it did. He did not. And that's why he wants to greater Russia all over again. That is a fact. That is true. So he's not. So if you know that, if you know history, right, then you shouldn't ask him to go back and give up Crimea, right? You shouldn't ask for something like that. And yet you're asking for it. Knowing, because I'm sure they have history professors on the other end, knowing that he's never going to accept. So what are you doing? What they're all doing, they are pushing and tugging from all areas, knowing that they want to put the U.S. administration against the wall. But be careful, because if you don't know what's driving the U.S. administration, you might be surprised at the result. They may just decide, you know what? We're not even selling weapons anymore. We're out of this thing. We do not want to get involved anymore. And that's going to be a lot of damage, right? Because Ukraine cannot fight this war on its own without the U.S. weaponry, unless Europe wants to give the weapons. But then they're going to give weapons to Ukraine against Russia, and Russia is going to get closer to China, which is going to go back to Europe and say, listen, you got to let them go. So that battle is being lost as we speak. And one thing that the U.S. administration does not want is lose that battle. When I mean the administration, I'm talking about J.D. Vance, Mark Rubio, all these people, Marco Rubio, right? All these people, they want to, this is interest. It's not, they don't really care about the war or anything like that. They want to know what's in it for me. Trump, you're right, is done. Not done, but that's it. He's not going to be president again, ever. And he's 79 years old. That's someone doesn't he want to retire ever? So that's, but the thing is, whatever they're going to do is going to impact us, the people, right? You and my subscribers. Don't forget to subscribe, by the way. That is and this meeting, the closer you go, the closer you get, the more complicated and the more pressure you have, because they're all clamoring after the same thing, their own interests. And Benzo says, what the supporters don't understand is whoever supersedes Trump as a Republican leader will be worse. Well, I mean, you don't know that, since you don't even know who it's going to be. Now, of course, the Republicans and the Democrats have two separate approaches, right? Would Kamala have done what Trump done? No. Would she be faced with the same issue? I hate to tell you, even before Trump, the U.S. is becoming irrelevant. The U.S. has a lot of debt. The dollar is getting weaker. The stock market in the U.S. is doing worse than Europe. And that's a fact. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done in the U.S., and there's not much time. Now, is a current administration the way to do it? Maybe we need an administration that is a little bit more understandable. Do we need a Marco Rubio in there? Do we need somebody more, approachable? But at the end of the day, I mean, you can't be Mr. Nice Guy. You gotta protect your interests, right? You need to protect your interests. Now, let me tell you right now, in terms of stock market, what am I looking at? Year over year, I mean, the market is up 19% year over year, which is great. But Germany is up 36%. Italy is up 30%. Spain is up 40%. And Shanghai is up 27%. I mean, the U.S. stock market is not doing that great, my friends. It is not doing that great. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done in a very short amount of time. On a phone call on Sunday, Chancellor extended an invitation to meet Trump. So it's not going to be a meeting. It's going to be a video conference on Wednesday. So basically, you're going to have Germany, France, Britain, Italy, which is very close to Trump, by the way, Poland, trying to be in the middle. Finland, NATO. The NATO guy is the one that call Trump Daddy. And of course, Zelensky. The effort reflects deep concern over the sort of deal could reach with Putin, but he's not going to reach a deal. Here's some nice word from Di Bustillo. I hope and pray that they will get wisdom to reach a wise solution unto the end of the war. Yes, I mean, nobody wins anything in wars. You know, it's funny because, well, it's not funny, but why is it that so the stock market is being hurt by Zelensky? But Zelensky is not hitting the stock market. What hurt the market at the beginning of the year were all the tariffs. The U.S. was on its way with the stock market, and then the tariffs. So now this U.S. is kind of reshuffling and going back up. Hey, Matteo. But I like what Di Bustillo said, that I hope and pray that they get wisdom to reach a wise solution to the end of the war. Yes. Because nobody wins in a war. Right? Look at Russia, look at Ukraine, look at Gaza and Israel. And what is it that, someone always asks, why is it that we always get into wars and more wars and more wars? Don't we know by now how to avoid them? That's because it is a human spirit. The brain, the human body, the human brain, right, its aim is to preserve energy. And that preserving energy, you need to act sometime before knowing all the facts. Because you don't have time to stop and think and think and think over and over and over. You want to act, boom. That's what's been happening. And that's why you make mistakes. Why do you think there are so many divorces? Don't we know by now how to avoid a divorce? Don't we? No, because the human mind is such a way that it doesn't take the time to think and understand all the consequences. And unfortunately, that is the problem. And these people, this week is going to be a very humongous deal. Because if they don't get to agree, which they won't, then it's going to put the U.S. in a very difficult situation. Because the U.S. can't just say, okay, let's keep some more. Because the more we do that, then they'll turn around and say, well, look at you told us that you were going to resolve this thing. And look, you're not doing anything. You keep talking, and nothing happens. So you're putting pressure on him as well. Going to have to do something. Next. Let's see about the next survey. Should Trump listen more to MAGA? Let's see. That's a very important question. Because I believe at the end of the day, that's what's driving everything. That is what's driving the whole thing right now. It's not Ukraine. It's not Zelensky. Trump has interests. And he should know he used to manage many interests. And the interest needs to align. And that means that knee-jerk reaction. The expulsion. I don't know what Billy's talking about here. Watch out, let's not go sideways. Let's have some interesting discussion. 78% says no, don't listen to MAGA. So basically what? We're not done yet. Don't listen to MAGA. Provides weapon to Ukraine. That would make sense. And meet with the guy. Oof. Wow. Well, you know what that means, right? Well, he's the president of America, not MAGA. That's true, but MAGA put him there. And so that means that you basically, want him to split. And frankly, he has had some issues with MAGA. Benzo said, I don't really from behind, but I assume it'll be in vain. They are all be willing to give up and write strongly worded letters to be much used. Unfortunately, the Democrats right now are becoming totally irrelevant, even among the Democrats. So basically, what they're hoping for is that the Republicans don't succeed, so you could turn around and say, well, you see what happened? You see what happened to the tariff? You see what happened with this guy? You see what happened with Zelensky? How about our turn? See what happened to the stock market? You see what the problem is they can't say anything like this right now because the stock market, and we have been following it, the stock market maybe not as great as Spain, Italy, or whatever, but is doing pretty well, right? The inflation is under control. Although some people say, yeah, but wait, and you'll see. Okay, but so far it's only 2.5%, 2.4%. So some ridiculous. It's very small compared to other countries. The dollar is on its way. How about some super chats here to keep me going? I want to buy some coffee today. Super chats, always good to have. And I will answer any question you have. Anyway, we're at 68% right now. That basically states, no, wow, that's amazing. That's quite interesting, actually. You do not want, Trump should not listen to MAGA. Well, that, you know what that means? And that's a concern. That means that basically Trump is moving away from MAGA. And he has, in a way, right? Remember what he did with Iran. He started he started this thing with Iran, and they said, what are you doing? We don't want to, no, I'm just going to go in, and so it worked, right? It worked fine. We went in, we destroyed those things, of course. And remember what happened, what J.D. Vance said at that time. He basically stated that, well, actually, not everything got destroyed, and it's only a few weeks postponed because he was reading this report. And you didn't hear from J.D. Vance for the longest time. Right? What else happened? Well, then Trump decided to sell weapons to Ukraine. And MAGA said, come on. We know what's going on here. We're not just selling weapons to Ukraine. You know very well that you have to be involved. You are involved even though you're selling. That's not good enough. And now you're meeting with Putin, right? And you're trying to end this war. Or are you? What are you trying to do? Please end this war as soon as possible. That is extremely important for us to do. Right? So all these things are happening at the same time, and this is what he's trying to do. He needs to get it done, and he needs to get it done quickly. 67% say Trump should listen more, should not be listening to MAGA. Interesting. I mean, we're in big trouble, people. That's what it means. I mean, we'll see, but... So the European leaders have arranged a virtual meeting with President Trump ahead of a scheduled meeting with President Putin on August 15 in Alaska, right? There's going to be a video conference hosted by Germany for Wednesday. It will bring together leaders from Germany, Finland, France, the UK, and Poland, alongside EU and NATO officials. The goal is to outline strategy. I mean, there's too many people in this meeting to talk, quite frankly. The goal is to outline strategy on pressing Russia, potential peace processes in occupied territory. My point is this, is that Trump is not going to Canada he's not going to Alaska to really talk about this peace. He's really going to Alaska to speak to Putin and to get an understanding of what his goals are and what's going to happen. That's what he's about there for. Why? Because he wants to keep Putin away from China. And the longer Putin fights, the weaker he gets. And the weaker it gets, the worse it gets. Because he's going to need, right now, Putin is very close to China. I will tell you that India, for example, and China as well, currently is going to be meeting. I wanted to give the exact quotes so I don't make a mistake, but I'm pretty sure that India is meeting with it's meeting with China very soon. Let me find that quote for you. Right? They're getting pretty close. Yeah, India is meeting with is going to be meeting with Russia, with China, sometime I believe in September. Right. I mean, because over the weekend, Modi vigorously defended India's right to prioritize its own economic well-being. Yeah, India wants to make India great again. Today, the world economy is going through many apprehension. There is an atmosphere of instability, Modi said. In such a situation, the countries of the world are focusing on their respective interests. Here we go. He said it. He urged Indians to boost the economy by buying and selling only homegrown products. Make India great again. They're all doing the same thing. Made by the sweat of an Indian. Of course, Steve Miller didn't help things by accusing India on Sunday of taking advantage of the U.S. That's for public consumption because he knows what's really going on. Okay. That's what I wanted to tell you. So basically, PM Modi is to attend the SCO Summit in China. Narendra Modi will visit China for the SCO Summit in August 31st to September 1st. Marking his first trip there since 2019, he will also meet Japan PM in Tokyo, but he's going to meet China August 31st to September 1st, the first time to December 19th. Putin plans to visits to India. I hope you realize what's happening here, right? I hope you realize that these people are slowly coming together. And the U.S. administration is trying to stop it as much as possible because when that gets locked in, meaning locked in, they'll have defense agreements. I mean, because you're going to say, well, what does India need, right? Right now, India relationship with the U.S., Russia and China serve very different strategic, economic, and geopolitical purposes, and the degree of dependence varies significantly. But in terms of trade, the U.S. is high, meaning India is highly reliant on the U.S. And yet, they said to Trump, no, I don't think so. I'm not going to stop dealing with Russia. It's got high, very high, we're talking high to very high technology dependency on the U.S., very high education and talent with the U.S., very high strategic alignment with the U.S. On the other hand, with Russia, the only thing that India needs Russia very much is through defense, which is very high, and energy, which is high. And China, not that high, mostly very low, moderate, low in terms of talent, technology, defense, trade. It's not such a big, but yet, they are not replying to the U.S. requests. And they're not ignoring it, just not. So that, if you know anything, strategic-wise, it means that maybe they're already moving. Gregory says, I know the tariffs are just a tax on the U.S. Well, the tariffs, and this is a topic that we've gone after quite a few times, it's very complex. But basically, first of all, you need to understand that the tariffs are not borne by the countries, right? I hope you're clear on that by now. If you listen to my live, it's not. Right now, it's being paid for by the actual entity. It's not that complicated, right? It's being imported. Whoever imports the stuff pays. The only thing is, if you are someone in Wisconsin ordering, bicycle tires from China and you got to pay 50% more, The people that make the money should pay, not the people buying the product. People that make the money. Well, that's George, Greg Stevens. That's exactly what's happening right now. Right now, GM and Ford and most large companies are paying the tariffs fees, but they are not going to do it for a long time. And if it's too high, they rather not import it because it's too much. So if you're going to charge, like I said, if you are from Wisconsin, you're ordering bicycle tire and it's 50% tariffs, even if it doesn't matter because you're not going to pay 50%, you don't make money from it. And don't forget, Trump wants to put 200% on pharmaceutical product, which is another topic altogether, because that also is an issue for the U.S. So basically, what's happening is they basically, not going to pay for it. Now, if it's 10%, 15%, you're paying the fee, yes. But what happens when a company passes it to the consumer? How many companies are passing it off? Well, I've been looking into that. That's growing, but they have to be very careful. I'll tell you what, they have to be careful. First of all, they don't want to make sure, like, for example, GM was not passing it to its consumer, and they took $1 billion hit because they were importing aluminum and things like that. So they did not want to appear more expensive than Ford or Tesla or whatever. So they took it in the chin. But at some point, they're going to have to pass it on. But they have to also be very careful, because I bet you if they start doing that, they're going to get a call. You know from whom? They're going to get a call from him. He's going to call and say, what are you doing? Now you're creating inflation. Okay, you made enough money. Do not pass it on to the consumer. A lot of people, believe it or not, a lot of companies are concerned that, he's going to go after them. And they're kind of holding off. And that's why it's important, to have the current administration as much power as possible. Because if you lose that power because of MAGA, Russia wants Alaska to be an issue. I don't think they want it back, because Alaska belonged to Russia at one point. Right? You don't want to lose that power, because if you lose that power, if the current administration loses the power, what's going to happen is they won't be able to do all the things that they want to do. And don't forget, in the background, when no one is really paying attention, the courts are actually reviewing the tariffs and saying, is this really legal? Is this really about emergency? It's not about emergency, really. So I don't think you should be doing that. I don't think you should be involved in taxing and tariffing these people. Hey, Tashim, Ahmed, Khan, Durrani, welcome. Right? They don't want that. They do not want that at all. So what's going to happen is the issue they are going to face is they are going to need to understand that that's not going to happen. Wow. GigaCloud stock. Didn't I say it? Didn't I call that one GigaCloud Technology? GCT. Louis is referring to this stock that I've been talking about on my my Patreon channel. Again, if you want to let's talk 5-minute stocks. But basically, right now in the stock market, what you want to go after is really anything that is very cheap. And at that time, GCT and a bunch of other stocks, IDR, Idaho Resources, for example, which is has gold, but also rare minerals. Have you heard of that? Remember those? They're doing pretty well because right now, all of the small stocks, small caps are not doing that great. And that's what's happening. Anyway, back to our topic. So, should Trump listen more to MAGA? 53% say no. Not a huge, big difference. So the most important that I see from all those polls is basically that Putin should meet with Trump. Everybody agrees with that, and I'm sure you agrees with that as well. So that's in the line. Everything else is medium, half and half, half and half, half and half. What about the first one? Yeah, I mean, basically, and this is what's going to happen. And they are going to meet because Trump basically wants to make sure that he has more or less control over Putin or understand what Putin wants. Now, don't forget, Putin is a very complex character. Okay, you remember when they keep saying, "Oh, he's never going to make it. He lost all control over. He has no more access to the dollar. La la la." And look at him; he's still kicking around. He's still doing very good. So be careful. Okay, so what do they all want? I'll tell you what they want, and you're going to see that's impossible. Truly, truly, you cannot get everything right. So let's take a look at the end game goal comparison. So essentially, Ukraine wants full restoration of 2014 borders, Crimea and all occupied regions. What does the U.S. say? Possible acceptance of a freeze, so that wherever you are, you stop, or partial control if it ends war quickly. And Europe basically says no recognition, basically what Ukraine wants. So either you have everything or you have partial. But I mean, Crimea, that got lost 2014. Why would you ask something that you know you're not going to get unless you want to keep fighting? Security guarantees, NATO membership or NATO-like binding commitment. So basically, Ukraine wants NATO membership. That's never going to happen. Or NATO-like, basically a kind of a hidden membership, but that's not going to happen either. I mean, U.S. is willing to give security guarantees short of NATO to avoid direct NATO, but that, okay, so maybe that one gets done. The sanction, maintain until all territory restored and reparations begin. That's not going to happen either. Willing to trade partial sanction for the U.S. Ukraine role in the talks, must be present and agree to all terms. Well, you'll talk to him on Wednesday. Reparation and justice. Things happen on both sides, quite frankly, right? Timeline, we'll fight as long as it takes. No, that's not good for the U.S. The U.S. wants a deal sooner to reduce costs and shift focus to other priorities because you're weakening Russia, you're upsetting MAGA. Trump and the U.S. government has nothing to gain from an ongoing war. They need to stop that war one way or the other. Let me tell you, listen to me today and you'll see what happened on Wednesday. The U.S. needs to stop that war. It cannot keep on going and going and going. Either it pulls out completely and wants nothing to do with it, but still the U.S. will lose because, then Russia is going to say, you know what, then I'm going to China. Thank you. And I don't think the U.S. wants that. That is not a good thing. That is not something that the U.S. wants. Okay? So that's what's happening. That is what's at stake. That is the reason why this meeting not on Wednesday, it's just with European, but that meeting on the 15th is going to be very important because they're coming out of this meeting, you're going to have a slew of news and people are going to say, oh my God, would you believe what he did? Would you believe this is happening again? Nobody's, oh no. Hey, Henry Hill. Epstein, Biden, and Diddy. Yes. Well, speaking of Epstein, you have to remember one thing, is the MAGA people are very upset as well at what's going on there. And that is also inching away at the power that Trump wields. Okay? Who are these MAGA people we keep talking about, right? So basically, many within the MAGA movement have voiced clear disapproval when Trump resumed arms shipments to Ukraine. His reversal drew criticism from outspoken allies who see continued aid as a betrayal. Some people say it as a betrayal of America First values. If it's America First, what are we doing shipping and talking and meddling with this war which has nothing to be gained at all? What are we doing there? And that's and I know that the U.S. administration understands that. Of course they know. I mean, they realize that, but they don't know what to do with it, right? Because it's tough to maneuver on both sides, right? It's tough to decide what to do. It's tough to make sure that you are in the process of really gathering enough steam to be able to stop this thing from happening. Well, we shall see, how it happens. We shall see how it develops, right? But right now, the situation is not good. There are many, many balls in the air. The economy weakening a little bit, potentially. We shall see. The stock market, all-time high, but extremely valued. The dollar, weak. The tariffs, upsetting lots of people. Powell, the Fed. In fact, some people are comparing whatever is happening in the administration, what China is doing. Meddling with corporation. Telling NVIDIA, you give me 15% of your sales. That goes to China. Telling the same thing to AMD. Telling the CEO of Intel, you're fired. And the board said, no, we're not going to fire a CEO. What are you talking about? He's in cahoots with China. Again, China. You have the Maxwell story. Who knows where this is going to end up? She's supposed to come to Congress at some point. And if she doesn't, they're going to bring Clinton. They're going to bring all the Republicans that were there, all the Democrats that were at the time of Epstein, and they want to know what's going on. And 12 Republicans actually insisting, they're putting their position together to have everything being released. That's because the MAGA people, they want to know what's happening. Continuing MAGA-aligned theory, Trump suspended military and intelligence assistance. Remember the Zelensky? That was MAGA. See, and who was the most vocal? Who's the one that started it all, right? I mean, Trump was pretty pissed, but who really made a big deal in that office with Zelensky? It was J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance said, whoa, you coming in, you have no suit, you have no tie, what's going on? This is ridiculous, blah, 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 blah. You know what I mean? And this is what? Catering to the MAGA movement. He has interest, to become president, I'm assuming. Yes, prominent MAGA figures have clearly pressured Trump to dial back an end to U.S. involvement in Ukraine. They want him out. They want him, you got to stop this. His support for Ukraine has sparked significant backlash within the movement. You're forgetting why we elected you, and we elected you to take care of the U.S. and the U.S. Do whatever you want to do with the tariffs, but do not get us involved in a war. Give us the Epstein list. We want to see that list. We want to know what happened. We want to know everything about it. We want to drain the swamp. Lisa, that must not be easy to be president, I'll tell you. No one tax dollar should ever have gone to Ukraine. Well, quantum reality. Quantum reality. Well, how did it start? It started because basically, it started because for some reason that nobody understands, right? That Russia decided to invade Ukraine. Well, but he didn't go nuts, right? He didn't decide suddenly, right? He didn't decide at all, right? He decided, you know what? That's what I want to do. So at the end of the day, what you want to know and what you want to understand is what is going on. You want to understand that at the end of the day, what Trump is trying to do, he needs to keep you Putin away from China. But that is not going to be an easy thing to do. That is going to be very complicated. Okay? It's going to be very complicated because at the end of the day, these people just don't understand. They don't realize that these are all interests that they have. Trump has made a few errors going strong on Canada, caused Carney to get elected over the conservative candidate who was previously far in the lead. Yeah, the fact also seeing, well, that's shaping, right? Because Carney basically came out and said, I'm going to deal with this guy. I'm going to talk to him. And then you know what happened? They recently realized that America, NATO got all this started. Well, yeah, I mean, your quantum reality is right. What has been happening, you've been pushing and pushing and pushing and getting closer and closer to Russia. Do you believe that Russia invaded Ukraine because they're all Ukrainian and they were going to do it anyway? Maybe, maybe not. But the point is that you've been getting closer to Russia, and that's a problem. It's almost like we have foreign masters that own a lot of the U.S. already. I don't know about that. But Trump has made a few errors going strong in Canada. And with the Canada, unfortunately, Canada needs 70% of its export goes to the United States. Of course, Canada said, don't worry, we're going to find some other place. And so is Europe, and so all these countries. But how can they possibly do that? It's impossible. It's going to take forever. You know, how are you going to find somebody else? The United States, at least for now, it's not going to last forever, is about 25% of the world GDP. So that's going to take a while. That's going to take a while to get rid of the U.S. And that's what Trump is doing. He's basically using the U.S. power to, move in and do his thing and get in there. That's what he's doing. And that's what's important. And that's what is for you to understand. Tourism from Canada drop off a cliff, and as American wine and whiskey. Yes. I think Jeremy is right. Most people are not. I mean, there's a huge drop. Canada is really upset. Now, of course, that's where you have to wonder: was this the right way of doing it? Did it make sense? Yeah, you have to do something to keep U.S. relevant, but maybe you're upsetting the children. You're scaring the children, and that's a problem. What else happened here? So that's what with the policy and now Ukraine is seeking a seat at the table. I doubt very much that's going to happen because it is not about Ukraine. It's basically going to EU and NATO, say, get me a seat. I want to talk. But that's when you talk to regular people, right? I think it's the Time of India that reported it, basically saying that NATO backing as he seeks place at Trump-Putin talks, seeks European and support amidst concern of a potential U.S.-Russia summit could dictate terms unfavorable to Ukraine in an ongoing conflict, while Trump considers including Zelensky, Russia, raising fears of territorial concessions. A White House official said that Trump was open to Zelensky attending, but that preparation currently were for bilateral meeting. Well, obviously, what are they going to say? No, we don't want him. Well, yeah, I mean, sure, we that would be nice, but not so sure I want him there for real, because we're not here to talk about. We're not talking about. You don't want him to hear what they have to say. They're not going to negotiate. Interesting. They're not going to negotiate. How could you negotiate? How could you negotiate? On one hand, right, I guess the U.S. and Russia are closer to an understanding, which is basically Russia wants full territorial restoration, legally binding security guarantee. They want justice and accountability. They want sustained economic military support. No negotiation with that. I'm sorry, this is what Ukraine wants. Full territorial and legally binding security guarantees, justice and accountability. I mean, all these things are not possible because Russia wants territorial legitimacy. They want to keep what they have. The other guy says, no, I want you have to give it back. No, I want to keep it. Well, you can't have both. It's impossible. And Europe is pushing for that, knowing that it's not possible. So what does Europe want? In summer, Europeans are speaking one voice. They oppose any peace deal that excludes Ukraine, call for stronger security. What does Europe really want? Well, they are less focused on a quick ceasefire and more on a just settlement. It doesn't. So I think Europe is very noble in their approach. Japan, Jeremy says Japan, Italy, and several other countries have shifted their purchase to Canada. Okay, maybe we have a different crowd here. Let's do another survey to make sure. Should Trump listen to MAGA? Let's see. What are the liberals going to do in 2028? That's a good question. Tourism from Canada. That is true. Lots of things have dropped. So in addition to that, what you need to know is what is the 12-month outlook. With the, let me give you a percentage likelihood. So as far as Ukraine is concerned, what is the likelihood over the next 12 months that it gets its full wish list? Full territorial restoration, including Crimea and reparation and trials, 5 to 10%. That's the odds that Ukraine gets that. What is the odds that it gets at core minimum, like durable security guarantee, major aid, and no forced concessions? 25 to 35%. Now, if you compare that to what Russia wants, which is de facto recognition of gains, it's like 10 to 20% and 30 to 45%. So Russia is more likely to get what they want, which is in line with what the U.S. wants: spending stabilized, Ukraine arm, and de-escalation mechanism. So most likely outcome, 50 to 60%. We all 50-60, 50-60, 50-60 is basically continued stalemate or incremental gains, more aids, no for more peace. Frozen conflict light, cost contained, no big Russia-China split. See, that word is big. Europe, this is for US, no big China. For Europe, sustained support pressure, no settlement that rewards aggression, 50-60%. And battlefield advances, deeper China dependence. So all of the prediction, my friends, basically imply that this thing is going to continue. There's not going to be a peace treaty. But they all know this. They all know that there's not going to be a peace treaty. They are there for something totally different. They are there to plan the next stage, which is something that you should do all the time, right? For example, like right now in this AI world that we're living, you need to understand what AI is. This morning I did Jeremy says, China has canceled their major beef purchase contract with the U.S. and signed beef contract with Russia. You see what I mean? There was a couple of interesting news on that as well to give you a feel, what this Chinese connection is, and it's a pretty big one. Let me see if I could get that for you. But basically, recently, a Chinese potential future minister that was sacked because he was spending a bit too much time in the U.S. And also, don't forget, we'll talk about the drug industry, but the drug industry is having its own deep-seek moment, by the way. China, in terms of biotech, is doing a lot better than expected. And in some areas, better than the U.S. So there's 12 Republicans that want the Epstein file released, like I told you. That is a fact. That's it. So basically what has happened, China has detained a senior diplomat who aided U.S. relations, right? He had a great reception in Washington and New York, and he was seen as a potential foreign minister, and he was taken away by authorities for questioning. These are signs. These are signs, my friends, my subscribers. Don't forget to subscribe. These are signs that you need to be aware of. It's signs. I'm not talking. It's like a advertising. It's a few signs here and there. Be careful, because this is what's happening. A veteran of China Foreign Services who also fought corruption has most recently been serving as head of party international department. He was taken away after returning to Beijing from a work trip overseas in late July. They don't want anything having to do. But the same way, Trump is doing the same way with the CEO of Intel, saying the guy needs to lose his job because of his close popularity is too close to China. Even American can barely afford a steak once a month. Well, that's because inflation is here, my friend. You may not realize it, but it's here already. I mean, Amazon, for example, has raised prices on 2,600 items. But it's a small item, so you probably didn't notice it. But it's starting to kick in. So Louis was a 61-year-old, couldn't be reached for comment. Basically, most recent public measure, he was visit to Singapore. I think they thought he was too close to the U.S., and that's it. He's gone. He was supposed to be a strong candidate to step up as foreign minister. There's a war. I mean, there is a conflict going on, and you need to look at it in that fashion, right? You need to look at it as, okay, this has nothing to do with Zelensky. This has nothing to do with Ukraine. This has everything to do with China, and everything to do with the fact that the U.S. is losing its running out of time. What do I mean by running out of time? Jeremy, pushing India away with his 50% has caused India to try to strengthen. Yes. Well, that's the issue is, but what do you do? If you're pushing them, but you're not pushing. You tell them stay away from Russia. And they're not listening. The fact is they may already been together. They're still highly dependent on the U.S., but look at the comments that Modi did after. And the comments is not that, no, we have a misunderstanding. Let me talk to Trump again. I don't think he understands what's happening. There's a misunderstanding. No. It's not that. What Modi said is basically over the weekend, Modi vigorously defended India's right to prioritize its own economic well-being. So he fought back as opposed to, remember that the president of Switzerland came over to the U.S. asking and didn't get anything. And the president of Taiwan came to the U.S. and said, please don't stop by. I don't want to talk to you right now. Modi wasn't that approach because they each got, 39% and Taiwan's getting a lot. No, Modi said, today the world economy is going through many apprehensions. There is no atmosphere of instability. There is an atmosphere of instability, he said in a speech. In such a situation, the countries of the world are focusing on their respective interests. Okay, my interest is not to stop doing business with Russia. He urged Indians to boost the economy by buying and selling only homegrown products made by the sweat of an Indian. You know what that means? Stephen Miller, Deputy Chief of Staff at the White House and top aide to Trump, accused India on Sunday of taking advantage of the U.S. So basically what's happening with India is they are fighting back. They are saying no more. No. That's not what's going to happen here, my friend. I am not going to go along with that. George Stevens, the U.S. is running out of time. Foreign countries will own everything, set your wages, control price, make your law. Right? That is exactly what could be happening right now. I mean, it's definitely running out of time as far as this. Right, it's running out of time because of what's going on right now. Clock is ticking. The U.S. share of global manufacturing has declined from 30% to 16%. Okay. U.S. semiconductor. The U.S. used to produce 37% of semiconductors in the world, and now it's down to 12%. Well, I guess let them make the semiconductor. Well, what if they don't make it for you? What are you going to do? Which is exactly what Gregory Stevens is saying. Jeremy says India sent envoy to Russia to see about $400 purchase. They are expecting 3 more units and are angling to buy generation. That's right. That is true because India is highly dependent on Russia in terms of defense and energy. Yes. Lots of issues going on right now. And unfortunately, we're not so sure if that's going to end up very well. What I mean by that is that you have the offset of a situation that no one likes the outcome. It's certainly not the U.S. The U.S. does not like this idea that Russia is getting so close to China, right? And of course, the European wanting to meet in the middle is going to be, the leaders, the European leaders have arranged a virtual summit, so we know. Moscow warns of disruptions. They basically, certain countries will make titanic effort to disrupt the meeting because they want to make a quote-unquote a deal with Russia. They want to talk, they want to make a deal with the U.S. Trump has said earlier that Russia and Ukraine were close to a ceasefire deal. The content of the deal have yet to be announced. Russia is basically accusing some unnamed country of seeking to prolong the war. Undoubtedly, a number of countries interested in continuing the conflict will make titanic efforts to disrupt the planned meeting, he said in a post. Did not specify which country. So basically, they want to. If Russia gets what he wants, everything stops and it'll be fantastic. Time will tell if Trump overplayed his hand. Well, that's the thing, your quantum realty. You're right, because at the end of the day, what we're saying is what Trump is doing right now is, with the tariffs, with the tugging, the coercion and all that, the languages, he's doing it because, the U.S. is slowly, losing relevancy. Plus, of course, having $37 trillion of debt is not good. But only time will tell if this was the right, if he was right doing it that way. Maybe it's too late. The same way it's too late with what's happening to with India and Russia. They're not listening anymore. I hate to say it. Is Modi listening? Is India listening? No. They're still going to do what they're going to do. And they're saying, you know what? Sorry. I need my oil at 30% off or whatever he's getting. Even though they're accusing India to take the oil and reselling it in the market. Personally, I've felt this is too late for quite a while now, your quantum realty. Well, it's not too late, but you have to do something quickly. Not over several years. Like I told you, in terms of the clock is ticking very, very fast. We're talking within 5 to 7 years in terms of semiconductors. The U.S. is already at risk of losing competitiveness in key industrial and pharmaceutical sector. And without significant strategic investment, erosion could accelerate within the next 5 to 10 years. For semiconductor, is between 5 and 7 years. Because they are Taiwan and China. EV component, 3 to 5 years. That's with China and Germany. Generic, the drugs, the generic drugs, 90% of active pharmaceutical ingredients come from India and China, not Pittsburgh. I mean, you're still okay with the tool, with the steel and then the biotech, but drugs, EV components, semiconductors, and I'm not even talking about what's going on with rare earth minerals. That China has about 90% of that market. That is amazing that the U.S. just, and this is why IDC is a pretty good stock right now. Unfortunately, completely lost. The problem is that we elect a president every 4 years and our country is divided. You can't make plans for anything long enough. Well, yeah, I mean, unless you and then John Rice said 37 trillion, but they think they are a wealthy country. Oh, but then again, I will tell you, lots of international countries have lots of debt. In fact, I believe we are issuing more government debt in the world than corporate debt, and that's not good because government debt, doesn't build anything. You don't build businesses with government debt, and that's a problem. So that's always an issue that continues to operate, that continues to happen, and that is what you need to worry about. But who knows? Maybe at the end of the day, what we have is we have a situation where this thing gets resolved, but I doubt it very much, right? The same way I doubt very much that anything is going to be accomplished at that meeting. What's going to be accomplished, and you're not going to find out for a while, is a discussion that's going to be had between Trump and Putin. And that discussion is probably going to have very little to do with Ukraine because, Ukraine wants Russia to leave. They want to sue Russia. They want everything. And they have nothing to bargain with. Right? Russia wants to stay where they are. And they could go on. And if they can, they're going to help from China. Don't forget, China and Russia and India, they're all next to each other. Doesn't take for them too long to start dealing with each other, trading with each other. We won't even need the dollar since you took Russia out of the dollar system. That's why Trump wants to bring him back in. He's got to come back with us. He says, he's bought and paid for by the Russian. Well, I don't know, but do you really want Russia to get close to China? Especially everything that they know and do. And then before you know it, you're going to have to beg for pharmaceutical items. You have to beg for semiconductor, for EV components. And of course, since you don't want to beg, then you have a war. Then you have a real war. And that's a concern. That is a big concern right now. The big concern right now is all these events, right? All these events would actually become a big issue. And how long is that going to last? I do not know. When? Well, it's happening as we speak. They're going to meet with the European on Wednesday. They are going to meet together on the 15th, and then we shall find out. But I will tell you, the pressure is building enormously. The Kremlin said that we'll focus on discussion option for achieving a long-term peaceful resolution for the Ukraine crisis. That's not what they're going to be talking. That's what they're telling you. Right? You're preventing us from reaching a peace agreement. No, we know you're not going to talk about peace. You're going to talk about what you two are going to talk about, what the future relationship is going to be between the U.S. and Russia. That's all you're going to be talking about. And there's a possibility that Trump decides not to give any more weapons to stop this war, which is going to please MAGA. And as you're doing it, you're stopping the war. And then, you want to keep fighting, go ahead, but you're going to lose. Now, of course, Trump is... then Putin stays where he is, and he says, fine, I don't have to go to Kiev. That's not my goal. Kamala could not hang with these guys. Look what it takes, right? Aaron Williamson. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of pressure. and people don't like you, accusing you, and yet you have a tremendous amount of job to be done, and you have to do it quickly. You don't, and we don't know if it's the. I mean, I don't know if it's going to be the right way of doing it. I guess you got to do something, and you're going to find out whether or not it is a good thing to do. But you're going to find out soon when you see what happens to the tariffs. Are the tariffs going to, come to fruition? I don't know. Are we going to have an issue at some point? Potentially. Is inflation going to sip through? And then you're going to have inflation. And then you're going to have higher rates. Because obviously the Fed right now probably is going to lower the rates. And then you're going to have everything tied together. And that's going to be a problem. Right? Because one thing you do not want low rates, which we're probably going to get in August, and inflation. We may or may not get it if it's not passed to the consumer, although it is slowly happening. But then again, okay, when we say inflation, I mean, we're talking 2.5% in the U.S. It's not the end of the world. Make goods here, factory job. Yeah, and that's what happened, Aaron Williamson. There were not enough, all these jobs left. But I guess they left for quote unquote good reason, because then you're able to focus. Like, for example, in pharmaceutical, the US is very good in research. And the stuff is being made in China, right? The product. But the research is being done here. Although now, for biotech, I have to tell you that for biotech, more and more of the stuff is, even the research, China is developing more molecules now than the US. So China is not just nuclear power plant on the moon. Yes, that's right, Aaron. Yeah, China is looking to do that. I don't know about it, but I spent more than 2.5 extra this year. Yes, that's true. Yeah. I mean, prices are going up, but 2.5% is not a huge amount. Like we're saying, the U.S. has unemployment. Yeah, 4.3%. This is less than Canada, 6%, or Europe, or all these other countries. So right now, the U.S. is doing fantastic, and that's what the U.S. administration is using that point to say, okay, listen, I got a lot of people willing to spend. If you want them to spend on your product, you got to come over. You got to give me money. You got to give me investment. You got to give me something. They went. The administration went to Taiwan, for example. Didn't go there, but basically told them, listen, you want to give me $100 billion? That is not going to be enough. You need to give me $400 billion. 400 billion. I need 400 billion, right? Otherwise, I'm letting you go. I'm letting you be with China. And they said, please don't do that. I don't want to lose. Well, then you got to invest in the U.S. I need to make my people, I need to stop that humongous amount of losses that we have right now in industrial production. So that's the issue. That's a problem. We are a great country. Yes, I agree. Right now, the U.S. stock market is up. The economy is up. The inflation is under control. Unemployment is under control. Everything is great. But you don't work for today. You work for tomorrow, right? As a leader of a country, head of a household, but you're not looking for what's happening now. Are we going to get a job tomorrow? Or they're going to go to college? Are they going to make any money? That's what they're looking for. That's what they want to do, and that's what this guy is going to Alaska. Really? Qatar wanted a paper from Trump saying he asked for the plane? Tariff haven't kicked in. Yes, Joseph is correct. They haven't kicked in yet. Will they kick in? That's the question. College equal Aaron says college equal debt with no job market. Yeah, you know what? That's a big topic, believe it or not. I mean, I don't want to get off topic, but right now I'm seeing more and more article about the fact that a lot of the people that are trying to get jobs right now are having difficulties. And they're having difficulties because they go into a job market where the company is using AI efficiently. Right now, this morning, I had a live when I asked my subscribers, "Hey, who's using ChatGPT?" 80% saying, "I don't. I'm not using. I'm not using it." So a lot of people still don't use it, and you need to learn how to use it so you know what's going to happen. Because if you get a job, you need to understand whether or not that job is going to be not doing well received because of the fact that it's frankly not enough. Right? You need to understand that right now there's a lot of situation going on with AI, right? Hands-on, yes. Aaron Special, yeah. You need to be hands-on. You need to actually do the work. And unfortunately, what ChatGPT and all these things are doing, they could do your job for you. What I mean your job is, if your job is to read and process, read and understand. ChatGPT does this very well. I could ask ChatGPT to create a class, a course in a subject matter, and it will develop it like that, right? And then before you know it, you don't need teachers or professors, right? Because ChatGPT could start talking. But you do need professors. You do need these universities to get jobs, to create connections. That ChatGPT can do. At college, you might be exposed to the theory of evolution. Yes, that's true. But it's a theory. And because now, I'm telling you, I mean, ChatGPT, and that's the other thing for ChatGPT, be careful. Benzo said, neither Trump nor care about any of us, no damn or parent that abuse this system. Well, and that's the reason why I like to have this channel, right? Because I want you to understand what's happening so you can. Family crisis happening now. Farming crisis. Yeah, you need, because I want you to understand what's happening. You know, what is this? What is this channel about, right? This channel is about this. This channel is about, right, this. It's a black swan, right? You speed over the speed limit, you're cutting in line. If one told you today, yeah, Trump is not taking zero salary. He's not doing it for the money. He's doing it because he likes it. This is all about the black swan, and that's the one that we're looking for. We're looking for the black swan. We're looking for that event that's going to impact our lives before it impacts our lives. There are black swans native to Australia. Really? I thought that there was no such thing as a black swan. But basically, the idea of a black swan, it's the book was written. It was written by a hedge fund manager, believe it or not, Taleb Nassim, and he wrote the book. And he basically said that, and that book came out in 2008, around that time when the financial crisis, when they said, what happened? The stock market went down 20% in one day. People were in the street losing their jobs. What's going on? We're losing the financial system. People were afraid to put the money in the bank and they wanted to take it out. How did that happen? And that's what we're looking for now. We're looking for, we're not here to pass judgment if the administration is doing a good job, a bad job. We don't know. We'll find out eventually. What you need to know is, what if it's not working out? What's gonna do to you? What is AI gonna do to you in terms of the employment? Right? If you don't know AI today and you go out there, you know what's going to happen? They're going to replace you eventually. Why? Because they don't need you. And that's what's going to happen. Emmanuel, how are you? That is what's going to happen. And that is the reason why we need to be able to understand what is happening. We need to know what's happening. And we're looking for the black swan. So how many black swans do we have around? We have a lot. Right? We have a tremendous amount of black swan, believe it or not. Right? Where are they? I'll tell you where they are. If you think Trump isn't profiting of his position at everyone else, well, I mean, Benzo, I don't know what the guy's doing on his time off. I mean, obviously he's taking care of his people. He has interest. But obviously he's out there trying to do something, right? He's meeting with Putin when nobody wants to meet with him. He's trying to make deals. Is he doing the right thing? Is he doing the wrong thing? Well, I don't know. All I know is this. There's a lot of doing that needs doing, right? You have to do, the national debt is at $37 trillion. What are you going to do with that? The economy is strong right now, but how long is it going to be? Remember, very recently, we've seen some number for employment. We only had 19,000 new jobs created in May, and I think 13,000. Now, let me give you some exact number because I don't like to deal in rhetoric here, right? So basically, what happened, and that's why I think he fired that lady, because in May, he thought that the U.S. created plus 144,000 jobs. In fact, the revised estimate was plus 19. It's like, so I only created 19,000 jobs instead of 144? Yeah, but hold on, it's not over. In June, when we say we had 100 plus 147,000, we only have plus 14,000. So we are missing 258,000 jobs? Yes. That's a lot, right? And these numbers are significant. These are significant numbers, okay? And that number is the largest number in quite some times. And that's why I think he basically fired her because he said, what the heck are you doing? This is wrong. You know, this is, you're doing it on, I mean, I don't know, who knows what really went on there, but basically he's saying that she basically lied and, and this is not good. So how is the economy doing? Well, I mean, so far it's doing okay, but there's some weakening. The stock market is doing great. It's fantastic right now, although it's highly valued. The dollar is getting weak. The tariff is, oof. I mean, the U.S. is going to collect $300 billion. That is not a bad thing at all. America is the strongest. That's true. That's true. The U.S., America is the strongest as there has been. Yes, that's true. We have been, yes, right now. But how long is that going to last? And it's not fear tactics. The U.S. is losing ground slowly but surely. And it happens. Remember COVID? We said we could never not go anywhere. Well, yes, we did. Right? So you have to be careful. You have to be careful at what's happening. You need to understand the situation. You need to realize where you are. And more importantly, you need to figure out what's going to happen next. What is going to happen next with Israel, with the Gaza situation? That's a topic on its own. China obviously is decoupling, and that's some major, major topic. And that's going to have a huge implication. We cannot continue to vote for one person to represent millions of people. Scott Bassett did an end run around the Fed by buying $20 billion in long-term T-bills back at a huge discount, saving. Yeah, there was a situation with the T-bills. I need to take a look at that. Basically, they need to refund. The thing is, they need to refund $9 trillion of the $37 trillion this year. So that's a lot of money. $37 trillion. That's a lot. And 9 need to be refinanced. How are you going to refinance that much? How are you going to do that? I don't know. That's a lot. I don't know how they're going to refinance that much money. So what they're doing, and I need to look into it, but I believe they're having some issues because they kind of went out and did it and refinanced it. And that was an issue because I think Scott Bessent did an end run around the Fed by buying 20 billion in long-term bills back at a huge discount, saving 5 billion future payback. Yeah, because what's happening is right now the U.S. is paying on 37 trillion about 4%, something like that, 5%. I'm sorry, no, 3%. Sorry, around 2.5%, 3%. But now when they're going to refinance, they're going to refinance at the 10-year Treasury, and the 10-year Treasury, my friends, is around 4.2%, even higher. That's why if there's anything you need to watch the Treasury bill. Make sure it's not any higher. This is how Jeremy says this is how Bessent is leveraging the excess tariff money. Sometimes I feel like a CEO at a Coldplay concert. It feel Garrett Highs at a Coldplay concert. Yeah, I think this guy's in big trouble. Yeah, so let me see for you if anything else. So let me take a look at the European news here. Trump, Putin, and the future of Ukraine. Here we go. Trump tariff hits Main Street as small businesses raise prices. Small business significant raising price in response to President Trump's tariff. Business survey by the Financial Times in the Midwestern city of St. Louis said their suppliers have increased prices. That's a lot of damage here. If this is happening across the board, you have to make sure that a bag that sold for $730 before tariffs was now retailing at $800. Normally, we would reprice things on an annual basis, not daily. Well, you have a choice. I mean, raise the price or don't sell the bikes. Maud Halley said hi. Right? So you have a choice. Do you want to buy a bag for $730 or $800? I'd rather buy it for $730. I am not buying a bag for $800. Then, basically take the margin in the chin. Now, you have to be careful also because, they'll make articles and they'll look for people that are actually doing that. So you see? Now, technically, a small business optimism index released last month showed 32% plan to increase prices. 32%, not 100%. Census Bureau survey had a similar result with 34% business expecting. So, yeah, 29% want to increase. Now 32% want to increase. It's not 100%. So this is still under control. Then again, depends if you want to look at the glass half full or half empty. Right? That's the problem that you're having. What else is going on? Trump, they have a tremendous amount of article on not the most positive article, I have to say, but Trump deploys National Guard in Washington over safety emergency. Okay, let's not even go there. So basically, that's another very interesting news that's coming out also is that Pakistan is wooing Trump, and that, if you want to upset India, that's what you need to do. And in fact, I think Trump did mention that when he was talking, not to Modi directly, but basically is that Munir in June had a 2-hour private lunch in Washington with Donald Trump. Munir is Pakistan Chief of Army Staff. And he went to see, he traveled to Florida for the retirement of General Michael, the commander of U.S. forces. And yeah, Pakistan is making a move. It was an astonishing reception of a man who, despite yielding the country most powerful, is not a head of government. No, I mean, the Trumpist ties with Islamabad appear to be blossoming, while India, which was left seething by Munir's White House welcome, has faced scorn despite Modi's previous friendship bond. Yeah, I mean, be careful, because now it looks like Pakistan is in and India is out. I mean, that's amazing That is not the way. That is not the way India likes it. Frankly, and don't forget to subscribe. By the way, um, we have calls every single day to talk about the major topics, to see the impact on the stock market, to see the impact in jobs. That is very important. That is very important. It's happening all the time. But we shall see. So right now, what we are waiting for is that meeting on Wednesday, and then what we're going to see what's going on with them. Um, I was talking about Switzerland before, and the Trump tariff exposed the weaknesses of Switzerland's economic independence. I mean, Switzerland went nuts. Switzerland went nuts when they realized they were going to pay 39%. 39% tariffs. They said, whoa, wait a second. No way. Yep. 39% tariff for Switzerland. So what did they do? They flew over. They went to Washington, and Trump did not see them. But yet, right? Yet, Modi is not answering. China is not replying. I mean, they can't agree. Russia, let's see what happens. They're talking, they're being friendly, but they're not agreeing. They want to see an opening. I mean, the discussion must be difficult. I mean, imagine talking to a guy like Putin, right? What do you say to a guy like that? How do you agree to what he says? How do you maintain the relationship, right? Because you know that he knows that you're trying to keep the U.S. relevant, and he knows that that he doesn't want you to go to China, and he knows that that he doesn't want you to be with to stay away from Europe. Because believe it or not, what's happening with the Russia situation is, what does really Russia want at the end? Beyond Ukraine, right? Russia also wants to use any deal to drive a wedge between the U.S. and Europe. I want you to be my best friend. And he says, but I want you to be my best friend. And China tells Russia, but I want you to be my best friend, because it's in my interest for you to be closer to me. And talking the same thing. So how do these things get resolved at the end of the day, right? The only thing is, you hear more of this now than ever, and it gets louder. The thing is, you could not do anything, right? Just stay there and wait for it to happen. You cannot do that. You have to do something. You have to maintain the relationship. You have to make sure you watch out for your interest constantly, surely, because also what's behind Trump is the MAGA movement. The MAGA movement is all over Trump. And he's telling him, whoa, hold on, be careful here, okay? I don't want any wars. I want to know what's happening with Epstein. I want for you to keep me involved in all of the interests. I want to know everything that's happening. Because if you're not, the people with you will lose. Hello, Maud Halley. If you're not there, you will lose the MAGA support. And the MAGA support is extremely important. Very important, I might say. Why is it important? It is extremely important because it keeps the power where it belongs. And if I know that, I will tell you that people like J.D. Vance know that. That's why he's going to be at that meeting with the European on Wednesday, right? Another MAGA guy is Pete Ansett, right? He's also very close to MAGA. And he knows that if he wants to have any kind of job or election later on, he wants to show, look. And in fact, I don't know if you remember, but basically, he's the one that said, senior advisor Pete Ansett openly called for limited ambition, like restoring Ukraine to the pre-2014 border. At that time, when he was the advisor, then he moved up, right? So he said basically that limiting ambitions like restoring Ukraine pre-2000 border and shifting burden sharing to Europe. The U.S. is extending the China deadline. So basically what happened is the U.S. wanted to have a deal with China. There was a back and forth with China, back and forth. They couldn't agree, and then the idea is, well, they say, well, we don't know. We're going to go back to Trump to see what he decides. And basically, he extended a deadline for higher tariffs on China. Right. President Trump signed an executive order extending the deadline until November 9th. You heard it here first. The next few days, so the way the next few days are going to unfold is as follows. Trump and J.D. Vance are going to meet with the European, right? But he's meeting the European. Okay, fine. Well, the first not a meeting, it's going to be a conference call. And you're going to have Italy, France, and Germany, and England, and all the people that are. You don't hear the other small countries. Remember, there's 27 countries, right? A lot of people don't want to upset Trump, so they're not going to that meeting. So they're going to meet with the European, and they're going to basically yes them and say, yeah, I know. You want Zelensky on the call. I cannot have him on the call because I need to talk to this guy. And what you want is basically you want him to pull back, and you want to get the 2014 Crimea. That's never going to happen. And I don't want to waste a meeting because I only have a small amount of time to talk about this guy, and I want to make sure what's behind. I want to know what's behind because Trump is really a guy that needs to talk to you, understand what's happening, and see. Right? There's a big deal making going on here. Then he's going to go to Alaska, and that's a big gift he's doing to Putin, really, right? To coming to the U.S. and giving him meeting time and all that. Because technically, if he goes to Europe, he gets arrested, believe it or not. So he goes out there, and what's going to happen is Trump is basically going to say, you know what? I know that you're not going to pull all the way back. We're going to give you what you want. Right? Stay where you are. We know also that Ukraine is not going to agree to that. We also know that the Europeans are not going to agree to that. And I'm going to have to stop the weapons. I have to stop the weapon because, like we said, if there's no weapons, there's no fighting. Of course, you don't take advantage of the situation, right? By just keep what you have and stay where you are, and that's it. And we don't move, and it just ends, basically. And the European will go away, everybody will go away, people will be upset, but at least the MAGA people will be happy. And I need to keep the MAGA. You got to understand what's driving this. The MAGA is extremely important for not only Trump, but all of the people that have aspiration after Trump. They want something. They want to decide what's happening. Very important. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. It's important for you. We're talking about topics every day. We're discussing important, and most important, discussing, you're learning something. This whole thing is about learning. You want to learn, you want to understand the world that you're living in. Otherwise, what's the point? You're just there. So basically, tariffs on China were set to rise on Tuesday, but Trump orders extended for 90 days. Right? So basically, Trump is essentially 90 more days. Why? Because he has to deal with China. Why does he need to deal with China? I'll tell you why. Because right now, China decoupling, the U.S. is heavily reliant on key Chinese exports for critical supply chain, and that's what's scaring them. Electronics, pharmaceutical, rare earth, green energy components, and industrial goods. What are we talking about? Printed circuit boards, 50% U.S. dependence from China. Smartphone parts and tablets, Apple iPhones assembled in China. Computer chips, heavy U.S. dependence. Lithium batteries, U.S. dependence 80% plus global capacity in China. That's in electronics. In pharmaceutical, active ingredients, 70 to 80% U.S. dependence. We're talking about antibiotics, blood pressure medicine, things like that. Antibiotics, nearly 100% 100% U.S. dependence on China. There is no significant domestic production in the U.S. for antibiotics. I know it's sold in the U.S., but it comes from China. Vitamin C, ibuprofen, majority from China. Why do you think he gave a 90-day reprieve to China? You have no choice. You're totally rare earth minerals. Rare earth, basically used in EV, wind turbine, military radar, missile guidance system, 70 to 80% of U.S. supplies. That is where it's at, my friend. That is what's driving this whole discussion. That is the reason why Trump wants to make sure that at the very least Putin doesn't get on closer to China. Because could you please give me more, tell me more about the MAGA team? Well, the MAGA team is all the people, not the MAGA, the MAGA, right? All these people that basically want to make America great again. That was created by Trump, but they really want to make America great again. And that means, A, no elite treatment. B, we don't want to have any war. We don't want to get involved in any war. Everything is for and by the U.S. Basically, we want to create Fortress America, right? Everything gets built. Hey, Christos K. Right? That's what's happening. What else are we dependent on China? Rare earth minerals, 70 to 80% of U.S. supplies come from China. EV chain, forget it. Solar panels, 80 to 90% global output. Graphite for batteries, 80% of global processing. Of course, you're going to say, how did the U.S. allow itself to get there? Well, because you have everything done by someone else, and that's what happens. I mean, it's a good thing because you could focus on other things, so don't worry about it. Well, are you worried now? Why are you worried? You think that that supply is going to end at some point, and they're going to close their doors, and then you're going to be left outside? I should have thought about that earlier. That's the reason why you have to be careful. That's the reason why you need to understand, keep your friends closer and your enemy closer. That's what's happening right now. The U.S. is keeping its friend closer and enemy closer by going to Alaska and telling Putin, oh, hey, so what are we talking about? What are you doing? Right? Where are you going to be? What are you going to do? That's what they're trying to do. And at the end of the day, we shall see. We will see what they end up doing. But I just told you, right? Heavy. And hopefully you could understand. I want to put you in the mind of the negotiators, right? So you could see what they're thinking. And then it's going to be important for you to see what happens after the meeting on the 15th. Let's see what they say. You're going to hear all kind of things. No problem, Margo. Magrulisan. No, MAGA is very important. And you need to understand what drives these people. And it's not emotion. Like I said, it's all about interests. I want to take care of my interests first. Because countries only have interests. They don't have enemies. They don't have friends. They have interests. Wow, Bitcoin is $120,000. What else is happening? I want my subscribers to be the best informed subscribers on the planet. Benzo? That's true. No, don't erase it. No, you're right. Yeah, no, they're keeping their friends closer. And you never know, because they maybe Putin is doing the same thing the other way around, because Putin does not want Trump to get close to the European. That's not in his interest. Well, Some people are actually comparing Trump to Napoleon. That's too much. I mean, there's a lot of things happening. It's amazing. Um, so we know about the European leaders that plan to meet before the Putin talks. We know that. Wanted to see if there's any latest development for you, but I think that because the market is closing, everything is closing, but um, there's a lot of issue on the table. Yeah, wow. I mean, imagine all. Oh, China. Trump is also asking China to quadruple its U.S. soybean import as trade truce deadline looms. I mean, that got extended, but basically he wants, buy more from agriculture. And that's why he's a little pissed about Switzerland, because Switzerland has huge import, like 29% if you import, soy and all that into Switzerland, because they want to protect their industry. Everybody's protecting their own industry, their own interest. The two sides met again in London. Today's meeting has sounded optimistic, likelihood of a deal. That sounds like second quarter. China retaliatory measures have targeted soybeans and beef as well as pork, seafood, cotton, chicken, and corn. This is a tough situation, people. This is a tough situation. I don't know how this gets resolved amicably. And it cannot just stay the way it is. It cannot just stay like, well, we don't move then. Let's not do anything. Let's just stay where we are. Let's not do anything. I don't think you could do that. Right? I think that at the end of the day, what's going to happen is you're going to have all these people involved, all of that at the same time. That's going to be a lot of damage. And we shall see what happened on Friday, on the August 15th. I don't know, but we shall see. Right? So don't forget to subscribe. What are we talking about next? We're talking about lots of topics. I'm going to pick some good topics for you because not so much the stock market, because that's a little bit complex, but I think I want my subscribers to be aware of what's going on. Any questions for me? Any topic? Come on, let's let it out. Wow, guys, we've been around for 2 hours and 30 minutes here. Any super chats for me here? Can't be drinking water all the time. Gaza. Wow. Well, I don't know about that. Well, that, believe it or not, has a lot to do with the fact that, um, Netanyahu wants to keep fighting. He wants to stay out there as long as possible. And obviously, by getting into Gaza, you're inviting more fighting, right? It's not going to stop. During the war with Israel, with Iran, that was a doozy right there, right? During the it was amazing that Trump got in there, but it looks like Netanyahu was on his own and doing his own thing, and he didn't want to stop. So that was interesting, I have to say. But also during that war, they were losing a lot of weapons. They were running out of weapons. And the U.S. lost a lot of weapons, my friends. Yeah. What else do I have for you of interest? India is primarily a farming society for thousands and is very dear to the 60-70% Indian society, yes. And unfortunately, Trump has upsetted India a lot. But again, it's not like he's a mean person. It's just he's got interests, and he wants to make sure that India, he's trying to pressure Russia, but more importantly, he wants to keep also India away from Russia. They're trying, they're trying all type of things, try to keep all these countries doing their own, on their own, and trying to really, India. I mean, the thing is, India cannot lose its relationship with Russia, despite the threat of U.S. tariffs. Right? I mean, Trump has blasted India, heavy reliance. The president slapped India with an additional 25% on top of the 25%, 50%. Right? That's going to inflict real damage in the Indian economy. But Modi has stood firm and he says, you know what? Sorry. He says it's unfair, unjustified, unreasonable. You have upsetted Modi, which is a pretty level-headed guy. Sovereign countries, like he said, should have and do have the right to choose their own trading partners. And of course, on Friday, this is a good one. You're going to like this one, Magru Lisan. Modi wrote on X that he had a good and detailed conversation with my friend, President Putin. I thanked him for sharing the latest development in Ukraine. Reaffirm our commitment to further deepen the India-Russia special and privileged strategic partnership. Edgar Rasani. Since the Cold War, he keeps buying Russian military. Well, I mean, he's highly dependent on Russia. That's true. Since the Cold War, Russia has been one of India's most constant partners in a relationship anchored by arms deal, economic cooperation, and diplomatic support. So he's not giving up on. He is not giving up on Russia. Sorry, that is not happening, my friends. Amazing. Any of you going to trade your dollars for bricks? Well, right now bricks is pretty strong, but there's no bricks actually. The dollar is the dollar is a reserve currency. It's going to remain so for a while. Because that's your morality and your social life. Well, I mean, you gotta deal with that. But it's amazing how much. So we shall see what happens on Friday. Have you heard of the remote viewers who predict the U.S. would default and give a fair cut on the debt? No, I mean the U.S. is not going to default on its debt, and the reason it's not going to default is because the dollar is a reserve currency. So that's not going to happen. Okay, my friend, I will therefore see you tomorrow for more exciting topics you're going to like tomorrow, I guarantee you.